Welcome to the Changemakers Podcast, produced by City Current and powered by Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services.
This show shares personal stories and insight from those who are leading by example, fueling positive change and making a difference so we can learn and do the same.
We cover life lessons, business advice, passion, and purpose.
Now here's your host, Jeremy Park.
Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services is proud to power the Changemakers Podcast. We're a people-first company that protects what matters most, the families, businesses, and trailblazers that keep our community going. As one of the nation's top independent insurance firms, Higginbotham is a single-source solution for business insurance, employee benefits, HR services, and personal insurance that's customized for you. We're here to serve you, the people you care about, and your community. Call 866-377-1959 or visit higginbotham.com.
Welcome to the Changemakers Podcast, produced by City Current and powered by Higginbotham. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. On this episode, our guest has a through line of community service, serving in our military, becoming a police officer, and launching a nonprofit focused on helping disengaged youth. We're going to talk about the power and importance of consistency, how you can earn the right to transform lives. We're here with Monnie Bush, founder and CEO of V1CTORY Project. Monnie, how are you doing?
Hey, Jeremy, man, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Look forward to learning and sharing what we do and how we do it. And it's just a great opportunity to meet you again and just share our story. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, you are doing tremendous good. And the fun of Changemakers Podcast is we get to know you personally, your story, and then that will lead us into all the good you're doing with V1CTORY Project. So let's start out. Give us some background on where you grew up.
Well, I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, where I'm currently located. And I grew up in a really kind of a traditional family for this part of our country, meaning a lot of my family came up from the South. Appalachian roots, coal miners, tobacco farmers, those folks that worked really hard. And back in the 50s and 60s, they migrated up to the Dayton area because there was good manufacturing jobs up here. And that really changed the trajectory of my family because, my dad went to a better school than he would have been if he stayed down there. He was able to get a better job, and which allowed our family to move into a nicer community. And it kind of, grew from that. And so I grew in a middle-class General Motors family and had a mixed family with my mom and dad, my mom coming with some children already of her own, and grew up learning a lot about what hard work looks like, about sacrificing for your family. Of course, you don't appreciate it at the time, but I definitely look back and see they made a lot of sacrifices for our family. And early on just was exposed to family members and friends that kind of all was in the same situation, and public school was great at the time, and I would love being creative. I wasn't a great student, but I loved music, and we grew up in a faith community, so I just had a kind of a traditional, whatever that is, family experience, and that really set a foundation for me to again, look back and appreciate what I had, but also start to look around and see, man, not everybody has that, and appreciate the things I did have.
Give me one family tradition that stands out when you look back, and it can be around the dinner table. It can be after church or going to church. But when you think about special moments, what's one or two that stand out to you?
Yeah, so you asked that question, one picture came into mind, and it really, at time, I didn't appreciate it at all. Every summer when I was in elementary school, middle school, I still had family that lived in Kentucky, and they were tobacco farmers. And so every summer they would put me on a bus, or believe it or not, Greyhound bus as a kid, send me back down there and spend the summer picking tobacco and baling hay. And I'll tell you, man, I love the folks down there. I love being from our family, but that's some hard work. And it helped me understand, like, man, I don't necessarily want to do this when I get older. I don't want that same hard work lifestyle. But I look back now, I'm like, that was so important for me to just, again, understand where my family came from, appreciate folks that that's their lifestyle, and also kind of motivated me to try something different, but without losing that connection. So that was really important growing up. And it was always kind of a topic around the family about our heritage and to be proud of those things. And it was fun. Yeah, and fun. Hard work, but fun.
When you think about sayings, phrases, things that your mom and dad would say over and over again that you're like, oh, here we go again, but now you find yourself maybe saying those same things. Are there any
Yeah,
of those sort of lessons or things that you think about from your mom or your dad?
man, that's a great question. I would think, my family was strong in faith. We wanted to give our, lives to a mission and purpose beyond ourselves. And so that was kind of demonstrated for me and not necessarily articulated. But one thing my dad would often say was, find a way. I would come up with these excuses of school and maybe a social situation I was going through and looking to everybody else to help me fix that when it was often like put back on me, like you have a vote in this, you have some buy-in. You got to find a way to, whether it's a job or a family situation, find a way to figure that out. And through faith and just hard work and then a peer group to help you through accountability, you were able to do quite a bit. And so I remember that being something that was shared and modeled for me as a kid.
When you look at the family, siblings, what was that relationship like then and what is it like now?
Yeah. Well, I have two half sisters and a half brother, and there's quite a bit of age difference. So I didn't really grow up as closely with them age wise. I have a younger sister who we had the same parents. And so we had a lot more of a traditional family environment. And so growing up, my older siblings, very successful, very business driven, owning their own businesses, pursuing a success in a business sense. And so not a lot of education. It was interesting where families not go through traditional educational venues like college and things, but a lot of people who are kind of entrepreneurial mindset. And so that I think they also had that hard work and find a way kind of mindset that they were able to leverage and they became very successful in business sense. My younger sister and I have a lot more probably in common. We're also very entrepreneurial, but we have a little more of a faith component to it. Like we really that's our filter where my older siblings didn't quite have that as much. And I think today there's more of that in their lives, a little more reflection. And as you get older, you start to see how purposes in life and some of those, you might have a lot of financial success, but what really is life about? And so it's definitely changed, but it's more, I think it just matured and really taken became part of our family's, ecosystem, even though we're not all the same situations. But I think that has evolved. You saw the hard work, and then the question was, well, why am I working so hard? I've got to take care of my family, of course, but what's next, and why is this all for? So that kind of makes you more introspective.
Talk about service because service to the community is a big part of your through line and military service, police officer. I mean, you've got a really important through line there of serving the community. So where does that start to factor in?
Yeah, after high school, my dad was in the Marine Corps, and I had other family members that were Marines. And so that would grew up around that. I had a lot of respect for the military in general, but the Marine Corps more specifically, there's just a kind of an ethos there that is bred into that. And so I kind of wanted the same. So after high school, I joined the Marine Corps, and luckily and blessed didn't serve during any of the last couple decades of conflicts. But that experience was very much a formatization experience, having leaving home, put in a very challenging environment, people screaming at you, you can't call home, there's no like going away. You have to, again, you got to deal with this. And the thing I think the military really does is start to form you to think of outside yourself. Like you're something something bigger than you. There's a purpose behind it. You don't always see the purpose in the beginning, but you start to see that, oh, I understand why I was challenged in this area. This is going to help me face challenges that may happen on the battlefield. But it was more of the working for something outside yourself was the first chance you could do that. It's as a kid and as an adult, you're kind of like very self-centered. But when you're in that environment and you see other people working hard, sacrificing, and it kind of builds that idea that, man, I want want to succeed, not just for myself, but for my platoon or for my battalion or for my friends next to me. And that was always super important formation period for my life. And after that, I still had this idea of service, like you said, but service with action, like that military experience. How can I be an asset to the community? How can I be an asset to folks? And really kind of understanding growing up that in any situation, you're an asset or a liability in a black and white sense. I know there's some gray there, but in any situation, those are kind of the two options that you kind of see. Where am I today? Am I an asset here or am I a liability? So I wanted to be an asset to the community and my family. So I became a police officer, and that was a great career. I really enjoyed the chance to meet people at sometimes the most neediest time of their life and try to be an asset, try to help. Of course, not everybody appreciates it because you may be arresting somebody or physically handling somebody, but I knew I was doing it for the right reason. And of course, made mistakes along the way, but really saw the whole purpose of my life was real focused in serving people in a very dynamic way. And so when I could go home at night, I felt, man, I either made a difference or I tried to make a difference, and it could sleep really well with that. But also saw needs in the community that I wasn't exposed to growing up, because I learned early on, nobody calls the police because things are going well, right? So, well, that wasn't a surprise to me. What was a surprise for how many, especially single moms and grandparents, were calling to get help with their child. And not criminal behavior, but just poor behavior, bad behavior. Won't go to school, staying out all night, stealing from the house, hanging out with a group of friends, and really seeing, you get called to a home and you have about 15 minutes to figure out something that took 15 years to get to. And that's where my heart would break, because I could see my family, my mom in that situation, because I would have been a knucklehead without that infrastructure. And when I got in trouble at home, my mom picked up the phone and called dad at working 12 hours at General Motors. And I'm waiting for him to come to the phone, and my heart's jumping out of my chest, and I had that healthy fear and parents that held me accountable. And then I'd walk into a situation where I didn't know the whole story. I just saw this need happening at the moment. And I think, really, how can nothing I really have to offer this situation is going to be a long-term benefit. And sure enough, over time, I would see some of those very same kids that were having bad behavior evolve into criminal behavior. Catch them in a stolen car, catch them with a gun, and now they're in the system. And I thought, man, there has to be an alternative to this for these families. As a person of faith, I was like, the church has a bigger role to play. I know it's not my problem. I would say, I wish somebody would do something about this. And I kept going. But over time, that continued to grow in my heart to try to create an alternative.
Yeah, and that obviously is the lead in to Victory Project, which we'll dive into deeper. I want to come back on two things. One is, what was it like it's one thing to be a police officer in a city where you don't have the relationships. It's new people, no one knows your storyline. You don't know them personally. It's another to do it basically in your hometown. And so the people that know you and you know them, what was that like in terms of serving in the military, coming back, being a police officer, but really serving those that you know and knew growing up?
That's a great question, Jeremy. Nobody's ever asked me that. And it was hard. I think it was very hard in a lot of ways, because two things were happening. Number one, you walk into a situation, you may know somebody personally, and that starts to mess with you a little bit. Like, man, I don't want this person to not like me anymore, but you still have a job to do, or if you are doing something, you may not do it to the way they like it. And then there's a lot of conflict, emotional conflict, that wouldn't happen if you didn't have that those connections before. Because I would go to calls that were, neighbors of the house I grew up in, and they're like, I remember when you were like 5, and what are you doing here? Trying to and so it messed with your head, it messed with you emotionally, but you still had a job to do. So it was a tug of war, really, in some of those situations, because I had to arrest people I went to high school with, and that was weird. It was really strange. And I still wanted to be liked. Nobody wants to not be liked, but you did have a job to do. So it made you start to make some tough decisions on how you're going to approach those situations where you can't show favoritism, but you have to also understand these people are going through is tough, and now they have this person they know. And sometimes you could, spend a little more time with them or follow up with them later, which you wouldn't normally do in just a general public, to try to like, hey, how's it going? Anything else I could be doing for you? It depends on the situation. Maybe a domestic where you had, anything I can do to help your situation. But it was very hard. And I can think of a few times where people would, hey, we were in class together and can you give me a break? And you're like, man, I can't. Now, if it was some minor traffic violation, you might be able to say, okay, just slow down. But some things you can't. Like, I mean, I can't do that. You got a gun. Like, you can brought a gun into the situation. I mean, like you, I still like you, nothing personal, but you're committing a serious crime, and that does mess with you. Like, you go back and you start having all these thoughts about the tension that creates, because I'm still going to maybe see that person when I'm off duty. So how's that going to work? So you start worrying about retaliation or something. So it does impact you the different level, I think. But there's also benefits to that, being part of the community, because they would also share information with me about something going on that they should know about, or the police should know about. So you had a connection where there's somewhat of a trust level that kind of came automatically, because we had a family connection or school connection. And I never wanted to take those for granted, saying, yeah, appreciate that. I would never try to put other people in an awkward position, but there is also benefits. You can see, and these people are invested in the community. They want their neighborhood to be nice. And there's some guys down the street doing something they shouldn't. I may get a call personally that may not go through the 911 channels. And so that's beneficial too, because you can be a direct assistance to those families.
Yeah, I think
that's a really great question.
It's the human element of it, but it's also the complexities of life and policing and taking care of community. And so I think that's where these are really interesting conversations in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Talk about then, you mentioned you show up and you've got 5 minutes basically to figure out something that's been happening for 15 years. Mm-hmm. And so talk about that aspect of, for police officers, the difficulty of stepping in, because this will lead us into Victory Project and really how you are empowering, supporting, training, equipping youth in so many different ways. But the complexities around, a small moment in time to try to, intervene with something that's been happening for a long time, what that is like in society then, but really in society right now, for kind of leading us into Victory Project.
Yeah, there has definitely been an evolution in that. And even when I've been out of law enforcement for quite a while, but when I first started, there was, intact families there was more intact families, a couple decades ago or 3 decades ago than there are today. And so a lot of the problems that start off being behavior issues really start at home. Moms working really hard. And then this is talking about families that are trying to do well. Some families are just, there's a lot of drama, there's addiction, there's things like that. I'm just talking about the average working family where you have mom trying to raise teenagers, doesn't have a lot of support. And those young men and young women, but primarily young men, they're getting, say, mom's working 2 jobs or going back to school to improve her own economic opportunity. They're home by themselves for long periods of time. And there's other young men and young ladies that are home for long periods of time by themselves. And so they're creating some self-destructive behavior because they don't have the supervision. And so when mom comes home after working all these hours and her son's not there, or she catches him doing something he shouldn't do, traditionally you would have a parent or a partner of some kind helping you with that situation. But because of how, homes have devolved and there's not been a lot of support, people don't go to church like they used to, social programs and are just not like they were. So really they're kind of isolated, and they get to a desperate point where they think, I'm calling the police. I can't handle this anymore. And from the police perspective, they're there to enforce the law and prevent crimes and prosecute crimes. Of course, there's social components to that, but law enforcement oftentimes, even back then and even way more now, there almost is a social work element that they're put into a position for. And law enforcement, while they have training on how to de-escalate and things like that, they're not really social workers, and they don't have the resources back to the time to really provide the type of attention and care that these families need. That's why I think the church had a big role to play there. And so over time, it's only become worse. It's only become more law enforcement's today is, for example, in Dayton, the west side of Dayton is a higher crime community, and in a 10-hour shift, the officer 8.5 hours out of a 10-hour shift, they're either on a call or going to a call. So that leaves almost zero time for proactive policing. So you get an officer who's been running call to call to call, and he walks in and they say, my son won't listen to me. He's probably not going to have the time or energy to give him any good advice. You're going to be like, you need to listen to your mom or you're going to go to jail. That doesn't work. They know better. And so you have this kind of the system's overwhelmed with need, and those traditional programs or institutions like law enforcement is trying to pick up the pieces. You have higher levels of people that are facing emotional challenges, and now the law enforcement's become a social worker and mental health professional and these things. And really, they're not supposed to be doing any of those things. And the byproduct is that less people get in law enforcement. It's a harder job. It's more violent. There's not great pay, these different things. So you have a decrease in people getting into that profession and an increase in need. When I started, it was pretty even. I think there was not, when you want to become a police officer, there was a waiting list. I know departments now that they have large vacancies. Cincinnati's around 120 officers short right now. Dayton's about 40 officers short. The need's not going away, but those services are not meeting those needs. So that's been, I think it's not the only reason, but there's all these drivers to economics, emotional, mental health, and you see the violence coming from that. Kids that are attracted to the street life, those kind of things. So it's really challenging, especially in high poverty communities, to provide those resources for families, because your heart is, you want to, but there's just not a lot of options.
Well, all of this paints the picture of what you're doing with Victory Project. And so go ahead and talk about what led you to launch Victory Project, which is all of this. So go ahead and lead into the story of launching Victory Project.
Yeah. So like I was saying, I saw this need over and over again, and I really thought the church had a big role to play, but that just wasn't happening. I wasn't seeing it. And then and I was involved in an automobile accident in the middle of the 2000s, and was in rehab for about 6 months and ended up not being able to go back to law enforcement. It was going to have to take a medical retirement. And so some opportunities came along to find some success doing some, becoming a contractor for security contractor, talking about for corporate organizations and private organizations providing security. But those moments I had experienced with those families kept coming back to me. I watched the news, I get home and I'd see a street. I know that street or a person's name. I remember that family. And it kept just growing and growing until one day I told my wife, I said, I think we're supposed to start a mission working with disengaged youth. That's about as far as I knew what I was supposed to do. And I have an incredible family. My wife was supportive of that, which means there was going to be a tremendous financial change for our family. But we decided to, let's look into this. How can we take our experience and resources and apply them to help some people? And so, Jeremy, what I am doing is about an 18-month research and development period. And a couple of things came from that. Number one, with no background in nonprofit, no background in this kind of work, I didn't know what questions I shouldn't even be asking or who I should go to. I decided, hey, I want to go to the kids I hope to serve someday and their families. So I literally went to the probation department and the detention centers and finding out some of the kids that are there. Can I talk to them? Can I talk to their families? Again, I have no title. This is just some guy. And I wouldn't go away. I kept on coming back. And eventually they're saying, yeah, we've talked to a couple of families. They're willing to sit down and talk to you. And so I'd sit down with these mostly moms and grandmothers. And I would say, look, I'm trying to start a nonprofit to work with young men, kind of like your child. What would help you as a parent if you could help build a program? And even though I interviewed multiple people, they kind of said the same thing in different ways. You often heard, look, I'm trying to go back to school. I'm picking up a second job. I need for him to be able to be at a place, not just sometimes, but all the time. And they need to be around people that I can trust, that have my son's best interests at heart, give him some place to go, some place that he looks forward to going. And then with those families' permission, I was able to sit down with their children, sometimes in the detention center, sometimes with the probation department. And I asked the same question, like, hey, I'm starting a program to work with guys like you. What would you want included in the program? And I heard, again, the same thing from different people. The number one thing they would say is, I want a job. I want to make money. I want to help my family. I want to do better in school. I want a new group of friends that are kind of also doing these positive things. And I don't want to end up here again. And so between what I was hearing from these folks and talking to other organizations that served, I started to see like, okay, there's some great organizations out there helping people, but there's some gaps that nobody's addressing. And those gaps are not just what I'm seeing. The gaps are what the families are telling me they're there. So we said, let's start a program based on what I'm hearing. And so very, very early on, we had a couple principles that's been very helpful to us over the past 15 years. And number one principle was, it was a voluntary program. So we wanted to create a program that the students, we call them students, want to be here. They can't be mandated to participate. And so that's very, very important, to create a space they want to be a part of. And the second part was, we didn't want to take any government funding. And we did that because we want to share our faith without restriction. And we want to show them that there is a path forward without the government being everything in your life. You're providing your housing, food, that kind of thing. So we wanted to model that for these folks. And again, talking to the kids, we said, let's start our own small business, because the entry-level jobs around inner cities are not there. So you have to go travel out to the suburbs on a bus to get to those jobs. Let's start our own small business within this community working that these young men get a chance to go to work at. Let's include tutoring. Let's have these guys work on their grades. Let's include some character development courses and Bible study, things like that. And then from the parents' perspective, we said we need to be available to help these families. So our hours reflect that. We're Monday through Friday, noon to 8 p.m. So we're after school into the evening. And on Saturdays, we also are here from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And that's when we go to work. So 6 out of 7 days, their child has a place to go. And that's year round. And we're even open during holidays. So, and we do that because it reflects our vision statement, which is offering an alternative to the street for America's youth. And we say the street never closes. The street's always got something for these kids to do. So it gives us that intensity and intentionality of every day we spend with these kids. We have to create a program and continue to build this relationship with them, and that they want to come. Because once they buy into the program and they want to be here, now you have some leverage on, hey, to stay at Victory Project, let's look at your grades. Let's look at your behavior at home, in the community. And if we've done a good job of creating that program, they're the ones self-regulating. They're making those choices to change. And then when they leave, we say, look, you're the one that you did the hard work. You improved your grades. You improved your behavior. And so it continues to build in that idea that you have the ability to, again, find a way, going back to what my dad would say, you can do it. And for the families, it gives them that peace and comfort knowing I can go to work, I can pick up a second job, knowing somebody else is there to support me. And again, it's funny because now we get those calls where I got him as a police officer, he's acting up, he won't go to school. Now our program directors get those calls because their child's coming to VP and their kid really wants to be here. Now they have leverage. Hey, you may be doing a good at Victory Project, but you're not being good at home. which impacts your eligibility to stay at Victory Project. So our program directors are having those conversations. Hey, what are you doing? Mom says do chores, clean your room. If you really want to be a part of VP, this is expected of you. So now the parents have that kind of a partner, and not really raising their kids, but helping their parents be able to position themselves so they can be focused on themselves as well. So yeah, that was kind of the early, evolution of VP, and having a place for them to go for school, and going back to our own small business where we have kids as young as 12 that are going to work. I mean, we're paying workman's comp on these guys. They're paying taxes, and they get a chance to go to work every weekend. And because that's such a big carrot for these guys, they have to hit certain goals and objectives each week. And the reward for that is they get to go to work. So they're competing to go to work every weekend. And that means I show up on Saturdays at 7:45 a.m. and they do landscaping, hauling, different services. But the idea that work ethic development, if you have a strong work ethic, you'll be successful. It's a great equalizer. I might not have the best education, but if I show up early, stay late, volunteer for every job that's out there, you will get recognized, promoted, and given the opportunity to work. And then you can make financial decisions for yourself and your family. And so having that within the organization has been a huge blessing, because these young men and families are getting this full spectrum of support that, and not just occasionally, but 6 days a week.
Touch on where you are now in terms of the number of youth that you're working with, but also too, you've got some great success stories. So give us one success story that stands out, and you don't have to name a name, but give us an idea of what success looks like.
There are a lot. And, we have a lot of these on our YouTube channel, but people can go and see a lot of these things I'm going to mention, or our LinkedIn, our website. But very early on, during that research and development phase, I met a young man who had committed a pretty serious crime. He was in a gang and shot 2 people, and was being sent off to the Department of Youth Services for a couple years. And while he was away, I would stay in touch with him. I'd put money on his books. I'd write him and encourage him. And at the same time, he's giving me more information like, hey, this is what I think would be a good part of the program. We're having this dialogue because he was seeing the value of what he'd experienced to maybe help other kids down the road. And he was raised by his grandmother, and his grandmother had his brother who was quadriplegic in the house. And so I went over and built a wheelchair ramp for him, and just make sure that, hey, at Christmas time, the family got gifts, but the gifts didn't come from me. They came from their grandson who was in prison. And so when he got out of prison in 2009, I just opened the organization, officially opened in downtown Dayton. And I needed somebody to help me run the program. And so he had this stark comparison of the guys he went to prison for, shooting a couple people in retaliation. Those guys did not write him. They didn't put money on his books. They weren't helping his grandmother. And this weird guy that won't leave me alone, helping my family out. And so when he got out, I said, what are you going to do next? He said, I'm looking for a job. I said, well, I just opened VP. Why don't you come and start working here? So he became my very first staff member, and he grew within the program. He was kind of a student and a staff because he was still learning all the things we were teaching. And he excelled tremendously after a number of years. He left Victory Project, went into the trades, and he married, has children. He's broken that cycle, that pillars of poverty, which I'll mention here in a second, what that indicates, to the point where the home his grandmother had him in, that he had his brother, he was able to go to the landlord and buy that house for her, so she didn't have to pay rent anymore, and bought a separate house for him and his family. And as a plumber today, a very successful trade. And he often points back to, I had this work ethic, and I had this opportunity to use these skills and discover the life God intended for me. And we always go back that, our motto is, it's less about what we do and more about what we undo. Because we believe they're already gifted and have these talents and abilities, but because of circumstances, they can't quite discover them. So over time at VP, that starts to open up to these things, and he can see now, man, I can help my whole family out, not just my immediate family. He's helping his extended family because he's has a good career and a good family environment. And so that's just one story, and I have dozens and dozens of those, but it just kind of tells you these guys already have this in them. It's just because of circumstance, they're not willing to discover those. And number of students, we started with 12 back in '09, and we have space for 100 students now. And we have 2 campuses, and we have them broken into middle school and high school campuses where there can be more age appropriate topics, for those younger guys and the older guys. Older guys are getting more involved in career exploration, trades, military, college. And we always celebrate that because these guys are coming voluntarily to VP. And that kind of tells you about their character. They want to be here. I think that's key. You can't force anybody to make changes. And so if you create that environment, they want to be here. Now you have something to work with. And so it's very important to have that environment. And the kids, they have their own door codes to the facility. They have access. When I hire a staff member, their last interview is with current students. So you may be getting hired as a program director or executive director, but you have to pass the interview with the students. And these people will come out of these interviews saying, man, that's the toughest interview I've ever been in. And the kids are like, why do you want to work here? And they're like, they can see right through that, the authenticity of it. And again, it creates that environment where from the kids' perspective, we want you here, but we don't need you here. There's no per diem that we have to hit to keep the lights on. But we want you here. And for the staff, we say, hey, we can't just be all fun. We have to create an environment where they improve so we can show that the outcomes are worth people's investment and time. And we see the kids' grades increase, the attendance to school increase, their employment increases. And so you see that impact but it's because of the environment and how people are coming together versus dictating or mandating.
I have a couple more questions and then we'll switch over into lightning round, which is just short questions, short answers. But one is related to your family. So I know that your wife is helping you with the organization. You've got 4 children. And so when you talk about working like a full day on Saturday and the holidays and, immersing yourself and taking this leap of faith and what it means, you're all in for your family too. And so what is it like for them to be a part of this? How has it changed your relationship with them, their relationship with the community?
Yeah, that's great. Great question. It's we couldn't do it without family support. In fact, at Victory Project, we say Victory Project success starts at home. So we have to prioritize our work. We believe relationship with God, prioritize your relationship with your family, and then work. And it doesn't always work that way. Of course, work always can take over sometimes, but we have to have, like, for VP, my family, we ended up moving into the inner city for 10 years. And that was a huge sacrifice for my family because of my income dropped from going from the corporate world to this. And I really didn't have the capital to have the same wage. So we said, we got to lower our debt. And we did that by moving into the city. And not only did it help us financially, but it immersed us in the community. We saw this lifestyle these kids have to expose to, the shootings. We had shootings all around our house. And that impacts your family. It's challenging. And I have 2 special needs sons. So 2 of my 4 children are special needs. So we had to consider that. But we always felt that's where God had us for that season. We just recently moved outside the city. But for 10 years, we were immersed in that. And it brought a lot of credibility to the organization. And we can really speak from experience instead of, hey, I read this. I can say my family saw this. I saw this. I experienced it. And I think it also, from the kids' perspective, they saw, hey, we're willing to do those things. They're like, man, that's different. Not a lot of people would be willing to do that. So it's grown our family definitely closer together because we're kind of like mission-driven family. Like this, we're all in this together. Even mom and dad may be the primary folks. My sons have been in the program. They've been members of the program. They've been students and been beneficiaries of those experiences. And it kind of goes to, a lot of people want, say you're getting into, it's really in any industry, Jeremy, it's, if you want to build a real relationship, an honest relationship with somebody, a lot of people want to jump to the opportunity. How do I have this relationship? And what we've learned over the previous 15 years, there's a process to really earning the right to be heard. And that is authenticity, consistency, and proximity create opportunity. If you're truly authentic, you're consistent in that, and your physical close proximity, you'll earn the opportunity to speak in somebody's life, no matter your background, no matter what you look like. If you can do those things, you will earn the opportunity to speak in somebody's life. And they may not always like what you're saying, like when we hold these kids accountable for something, but they do know it comes from love, because not because I said it, because, hey, I see you every day. I'm coming to your house, pick you up if I need to. We're working together on the weekends. That's the only way we've been able to see to build true relationships. And it's the hard part of the work. It's the hard being consistent in proximity. Those things are very hard to do. But if you do it long enough, that timeline shrinks because you have people speaking on your behalf. So we have families saying to their friends, no, these folks were here for me and my family. You can trust them. Or the kids are saying, hey, I like coming here. This is the reason why. So you don't have to convince. It doesn't take quite as long to convince folks, because if you're doing these things, people are going to speak on your behalf. And that's a lot of responsibilities you have to hold. You have to continue to earn that trust and maintain that trust. But it perpetuates this idea that, hey, we're all here for the right reasons. And going back to my family, it's helped us understand the uniqueness of the position we're in. We have friends, all walks of life, all backgrounds, and we get a chance to engage them here at a Victory Project or in our home. And it just gives us such a more rich life we would never have had if we had just stayed in what we thought we were supposed to do. And so I see my children having a vast number of friends, backgrounds, races. It's helped them just be a better, well-rounded individual, and just being open and authentic with people. It's been very beneficial for my whole family. And it's fun. And we have a lot of fun. And I do a lot of self-deprecating humor. Like I still wear cowboy boots and jeans into work, and I'm talking about going to the club tonight. They're like, what? I'm going to Sam's Club. After they're like, yeah, that's what I thought. You just be funny. A lot of dad jokes. The kids are like, oh, please stop those. But I would do that with my own children. And again, it's building this relationship that when they leave, they understand, hey, we're here for you. And that accountability is a love language.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've been dropping great just words of wisdom and tips and advice throughout, but give us one more, because I think so many communities across the United States struggle with, how do we help our youth? How do we take the lessons that you're learning and how do we apply them in our community? Give us one more word of encouragement, one more tip when it comes to the success that you're having and how you're able to, maintain the consistency and keep showing up. How do we do that in other communities to be able to truly help our youth?
I think there's a lot to that, Jeremy, but I think if you boil it all down to some takeaway, is you have to give these kids something to lose. And what I mean by that is they're making these crazy decisions because they feel like they have nothing to lose. They don't see a future. They don't see a purpose. They're living in the moment. And until they see that they have value and that they have a purpose beyond your current situation, they'll continue to kind of downward spiral. I think by creating that idea they have something to lose goes back to creating a space that they want to be a part of. Because for Victory Project, hey, you want to be here? Here's what it takes. It's things that they have control over. So, for example, the dues to be a member of Victory Project are a positive attitude, honest effort, and consistency. And what that means is you have control over those things. So you may be going to a failing school or a dangerous community, an addicted family, but when we say it's time to tutor, put down the basketball, could go to tutoring, that's your opportunity to pay your dues. That means I'm going to have a positive attitude, honest effort, and consistency. For that 45 minutes, I'm not going to be slumped in my chair, giving people a hard time. I'm there to pay my dues. And once they see the return on that investment, oh man, my grades are going up. I'm getting positive feedback. And we go back to, that was your choice. You did that. And so it's building the idea, like, I don't want to lose access to this community. And even though the kids that maybe that we have to release, we have in our program or SOPs, we call it a never forever clause. So if we release you from the program because of behavior or something, we give you steps to get back in the program. And there's no expiration date on that, because we want you to always have an opportunity to come back. But if your peers are like, it's crazy to see when we post the eligibility board to go to work on Saturday, their friends are like, "Hey, I get to go to work," and their friends that they didn't make it that week because of some behavior issue, they're like, "Man, I don't get to go to work." And so that peer pressure works both ways. Their peers are like, "Man, you need to get to work. You need to do better in school. You need to show up." So creating that environment where they've bought into it, and now you've had the opportunity because of the consistency and proximity, you've had the opportunity to speak in their lives. Then they see themselves being able to overcome so much. So just to recap that, it's figuring out, give them something to lose that builds value within themselves, and creating a space that they want to be a part of. And I would encourage any community to look how they can do that. They can maybe do what I did, talk to the community, say what would help you. And I'd be surprised if it was any different than what I learned all those years ago. It's very similar. And so those are those key factors to helping these young folks.
Yeah, and that's why I love Changemakers, is because the lessons that you're learning, the things that you're doing certainly apply to other cities. And so let's wrap it up with what we call our lightning round. So short questions, short answers, fun chance just to get to know you a little bit better. What do you like to do to relax?
Music, for sure. I have a little area outside behind my house where I like sitting by the bonfire and just kind of chilling, listening to music, just spending time with family.
What's a good date night for you and your wife?
Going out to one of our favorite restaurants and then heading over to get some ice cream, maybe go on a hike. So just being together, for sure, getting a chance to spend time together, and usually over food or walking through the woods somewhere.
What's a favorite vacation spot?
Man, used to go to the UP of Michigan, it's called the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Love being up there. It's beautiful nature, fishing, things like that. So I would say the UP of Michigan.
What's a favorite meal? And it can be at a certain restaurant if you want to, do a shout out, or just in general, what's a favorite meal?
Man, chicken wings. Don't put a chicken wing near me. You might lose a finger. So chicken wings.
What about a favorite show or thing to watch on TV, like sports? What do you like to do for, watching TV?
I like older movies. Like, when I say older movies, like 50s, 60s movies for sure. Alfred Hitchcock, those kind of older films. TV shows, I love documentaries too. I love documentaries, PBS or something like that. You definitely got my attention there. Not as much sports, but mostly the arts and some cultural things.
You don't have to get it verbatim, but what's a favorite quote or saying that inspires you?
There's a Latin phrase I use often called acta non verba. It's ACTA NONVERBA, and that stands for actions, not words. And so for me, it's like, that's a driver for me. And it's like, we got to show up. You got to show that you care. Talking's okay, but really showing up is key. So acta non verba is one of my favorites.
So this is kind of a three-part. First one is, what's something you've learned from your wife?
Oh man, for sure, patience. For sure, patience. She's been an amazing partner for me in Victory Project, but being the kind of our advocate for our two sons who are special needs, she is just tremendous for our family, bringing that patience and attention and care. Not that I don't, but it's different. Mom has just a deep well of resilience that maybe dad doesn't. So definitely patience.
What's something you've learned from your four boys?
Wow. Probably resilience, just resilience. But, dad's throwing us in these crazy situations, and them seeing the vision for that and making it their own, and even having, again, a challenging family with our two special needs sons, that creates challenges for our family, and everybody's really, but keeping it in perspective that we try to love each other, we try to encourage each other, and that we serve God in a way that it is, again, back to work, not just words, but we do it together. And So really resilience, I would think, would be a big part of that.
And then the third part of that is from the students. So the youth that you have a chance to serve and work with, what's something you've learned from them?
Man, resilience would definitely apply again for them because of what they're overcoming. And I would just say that word again, resilience, because of the choice they're making to participate. I'll say you guys are rock stars a lot because they could give me a laundry list of why they don't want to do something, but because of who they are inside and how God's designed them, they're overcoming and pushing through all those obstacles and finding success. And that's so encouraging to me. It makes me feel like if I'm having a hard day and a kid will come in and we'll find out what's going on in his life, I'm like, man, I'm so blessed. What am I complaining about? And it makes me respect them and encourage them more because they encourage me.
So you are creating your legacy every single day with everything we're talking about. But many, many, many years from now, what do you hope that people say about you and your efforts, especially tied to Victory Project?
I mean, I think God takes ordinary people to do extraordinary things. So I think that's something I hope resonates. They can look at me and say, this is just a guy who didn't do anything special in his life as far as professionally or educationally, but he went all in to be, again, going back to an asset idea, like how can I be an asset here? And he did it in a way that brought credibility to God and partnered with people to see like, hey, this is a partnership. This isn't me making you do anything. So creating that environment, that space where that can happen would be a great legacy of how ordinary people can do extraordinary things.
Well, Monnie, you are definitely a change maker. So wrap up with where we can go to learn more about Victory Project and get involved. Where can we follow you and your efforts?
Love it. So thank you, Jeremy. It's our website's victoryproject.org. So there's a lot of data and information there. We have a YouTube channel, which is a lot of videos, a lot of great things to see the young men participating in. And then we have a LinkedIn site. So you can look up Victory Project or my name on LinkedIn and follow us in those three areas.
Well, Monnie Bush, founder and CEO of Victory Project, you are a change maker indeed. So thank you for all you've done and continue to do to power the good. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's been a pleasure.
Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services is proud to power the Changemakers podcast. We're a people-first company that protects what matters most, the families, businesses, and trailblazers that keep our community going. As one of the nation's top independent insurance firms, Higginbotham is a single-source solution for business insurance, employee benefits, HR services, and personal insurance that's customized for you. We're here to serve you, the people you care about, and your community. Call 866-377-1959 or visit higginbotham.com.
Thank you for listening to the Changemakers podcast, produced by City Current and powered by Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services.
To learn more, to listen to past episodes, and to share your stories of other changemakers who are making a difference, visit citycurrent.com or call 901-321-1020.
Follow the conversation online using the handle @CityCurrent or the hashtag #PowerTheGood.